Good morning, everyone. My name is Billy, and I am the founder and organizer of Bookstore Romance Day. And I want to thank all of you for being here on a Saturday morning / afternoon, evening, depending on where you're coming in from around the world. Just a few little things before we get officially started. I want to thank all of our authors for being here today, and to Jen for moderating. I want to thank all of our sponsors who allow me to keep these events free for people to attend. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. I will be keeping an eye on the chat, but questions are likely to get lost if you throw them there. This is being recorded, and you will receive the recording link after the event. I don't know when, because my brain is not fully functional right now. I've been busy. And with all of that being said, I am going to throw this over to Jen to get us started with a Rom-Com Romp.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jen Simonik. I am here at Queen Anne Book Company. We're in Seattle, Washington, and we are in the midst of Bookstore Romance Day. We have a lot going on. It's always such a fun day here at the store. We kind of take over all the seriousness and make it our own. Anyway, I'm here because we have some delightful authors to introduce you to. If you've not already read their books, I highly encourage you to do that. And I think they're all labeled on the screen, but if you could just wave your hand. Elle McNicoll. I'm going to read her bio, and then we're gonna chat a little bit. She works as a novelist and has won the overall Waterson's Prize and has been nominated for the Carnegie Medal, the Goodreads Choice Award, and the Snyder Honor. Her work on screen has also won her some accolades: the 2 Royal Television Society Awards, the Broadcast Award, and an Emmy nomination, which is no small thing. She is an autistic Scot who currently lives in London, which must be really exciting and probably gives her a lot of stuff to write about, which is awesome. So, hi, Elle.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for letting me join tonight.
No problem. And her new book is coming out in October. Woo! And it is Unapologetic Love Story. Awesome book. I'm very excited for you all to read it. And then our next guest is Jennifer Moffatt. She believes that there are so many more romantic stories to tell than there are ones that have traditionally lined up on the bookstore shelves, and she plans to write as many of them as she can. Her short stories have appeared in multiple anthologies, literary magazines, and Jennifer loves hot summer's potato chips and lives with her family in British Columbia, Canada. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. And this is her newest, which came out in June, called Bump Set Sparks. Awesome volleyball players, beach volleyball players. There's a difference. And just delightful characters. Do need to say, if you go in with an expectation of what people should be, your mind will change, because there's not a caricature here, which is awesome. Really great book, great storyline, and very satisfying. And then we have Amanda Sellet. She's right over there. She's a former journalist and an author of rom-coms for teens and adults, including By the Book, which the book list described as, in a starred review, as impossible to read without laughing out loud. And from what I've read of her books so far, this is the new one that just launched on Tuesday, My Best French Wedding. They're dead on. This is hilarious. The banter is witty and fun and reminiscent of a lot of 1940s movies that I loved and treasure, and I think you'll really enjoy. Another book that she's got out is Flirting with Murder, and I can't wait to read that one either. So you guys are in luck. If you haven't read their books, they are delightful. And at the end of the broadcast, we're going to have a link where you can go and find them, plus their backstock, which I don't know, if you ever find a writer that you love, and I tend to go read one, and then I'm like, okay, let's go see what else they have. And then I go back and read them and ignore tasks and family for a couple of days before I find that. So So just to get us started, if you guys, we'll go around in a circle and talk about our favorite trope that we love to read and our favorite trope that we love to write. So my favorite trope that I love to read is second chance. That's what makes me happy. I love a good blizzard thrown in there with stuck in one forks proximity. That's always a nice thing. Um, and I don't write, but if I did, it would probably be about dysfunctional families and seeing the humor in them. So that would be what I would write about. Amanda, do you want to go first? Do you want?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. I'm always really bad at narrowing things down to tropes because I'm always trying to like play off of
Not.
them or twist them around, So I'm like my last book was only one covered wagon. But
That's
I
adorable. I
love,
love that.
yeah. I secretly, my deep secret love, something I've never written, but like something I love to read more than almost anything is paranormal romance slash urban fantasy. And so I think
Fun.
if you read my stuff, you'd be like, what? But it totally works for me. And I just love a little bit of snark, some found family, people who are on the side of goodness and some skills. But yeah, that's my fave.
Little competency porn mixed in on there. Ah, gotta love it. That's the best. All right, Elle, what about you?
I don't want to come in and bring any toxicity, but I like a bit of jealousy. I
That's all
like
right.
a little bit of jealousy, just because I feel like it's not acceptable in real life. So in fiction, it's really fun to explore. So I love that one, and I don't write to trope. I usually once I finish the manuscript, then I go, okay, I think this is the trope. But I do. I talked a little bit before we came on air, I suppose, about black and white movies. I love the old black and white movie, hate to love. I love that transition. I'm not an insta love fan. I like I like a little bit of tension and a bit of friction. So I think that's quite classic across the board. But I also like a bit of jealousy, which maybe I don't know, maybe not
And
the
I don't
best way to start.
I don't know if
But
I don't know if that's toxic. I'm a touch her and you'll die kind of girl too.
that's
That's
kind of what
nice.
yeah, in that ballpark, yeah.
I mean, it might be toxic if we're looking for that in real life, but I think you can read about
Sure,
it.
but this is
Uh,
fiction.
I mean, I'm also not looking for a vampire who shapeshifts into a werewolf, but you know what? I'll read about him all day
Yeah,
long.
for
So,
sure.
so it's okay. It's all good. This is a safe space. Okay, Jennifer, how about you?
I love to read, probably, I'm going to put them together, but fake dating and forced proximity. I'm a real sucker for that being forced together relationship. And I think my favorite to write is probably Friends to Lovers because I write slow burn. If you've read my books, they usually kiss in like the second to last chapter, spoiler. So it's not really a spoiler, but so I really like to write books where they build that relationship over time and develop the trust and the connection, and then they're pining, of course, the whole time, and then at the end they get together. That's probably one that I end up writing in pretty much every book.
Yeah, you gotta love the pining. That's like that.
Yeah.
Your books, from the one that I read, I was like, oh, like, well, I know what's gonna happen because it is a
Yeah.
happily ever after. But then it's
Yeah.
like, and
It takes a long
I'm
time to
sorry.
get there. It
Yeah, and
just
that's
takes a long
okay.
time to get there. Yeah.
Definitely okay. And I've gotten guff for reading these types of books, and it's always like, well, what? You know what's going to happen. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how it's going to happen. And that's the best part, figuring out how an author, like seeing how an author saw the story and went through and was like, yeah, you're going to think this, but then I'm going to zig over here. And then, yeah, we're going to get there, just like we're going to solve the murder at the end of the murder mystery. But, we're not going to leave you hanging because that would just be rude, very rude. Um,
Mhm.
all right. So I do have a couple of specific questions for my authors because their books, although there is a lot of enemies to lovers here going on, um, like actually all three of you are enemies to lovers, which is kind of, I know that you didn't write that specifically that way, but um, but I did want to talk about that aspect with you, Amanda, because your books are very 1940s, and there's so much wonderful banter. And what I loved about it is the characters. Like, I mean, we're reading a romance, so we know that something's going to happen. Something did happen. They're smooching. of like almost immediately because they just can't help themselves. Um, so who are the people who like what are the movies that most drew you to these like what made you what inspired you for this book, I guess.
I grew up watching these movies like with my mom, sort of after school and on rainy days and things like that. And I've always loved these movies. And I think I watched them so young that I kind of imprinted on them and their vision of what it meant to be a grown-up woman, and like the sophistication and the flair. And, you just don't take any BS from anybody. And so yeah, so this is a series of three books, right? So the first one is Hate to Fake It to You, which is a retelling of Christmas in Connecticut, but it's set in the summertime on Oahu. And then the second one is The Odds of Getting Even, which is a retelling of the Lady Eve. And then the third one that just came out is My Best French Wedding, and it's a retelling of His Girl Friday. So those are sort of the specific movie inspirations. And they vary in degree of faithfulness to the original plots, but there are always some moments of overlap and like direct inspiration there. But I think what I love that is consistent throughout movies of that era before you get to sort of like the post World War II, where it's like family values, the woman stays home, she's got a pie in the
Yeah.
oven, look at her ruffled apron, that kind of era of ideal femininity, is that this was a time when you could be really smart and really sexy and really strong. You could be powerful, but you could still be desired. All of those things that ceased to go together later, particularly in American popular culture. But they were just like so intoxicatingly delightful. Your Katharine Hepburns, your Barbara Stanwycks, like those kinds of actresses were so gorgeous and yet completely running the show, right? And so often you get like a male love interest who is a little bit more of a dope, and that's kind of fun to play with too. So yeah, that's kind of where those came from.
I'm thinking of Bringing Up Baby with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, where she's just like, and he's supposed to be this professor, and he just really has no clue what's going on the entire time, and just it's funny because women are allowed to be that smart, sexy, in charge of everything when they need us to be like that. Like in the 40s when men were at war and women had to pick up all the pieces and do all the things that were left behind, Rosie the Riveter, etc. And it's always I don't know why, but I'm always surprised when we flip back to the yeah, you don't need to do any of that. Well, don't worry your pretty little head over it. When in fact, you know, there's just so like society works so much better when we're all included in doing that. And uh, that brings me to you, Elle, with the book that you wrote, which is unapologetic love story. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Now you write about autistic people who are in love and have sex, and shocking. People who are neurodivergent do have sex and think about it as much as everybody else. And one of the things that I loved about your book is the fact that there was no like you they become a podcaster because they want to make a space for people who feel who have been told by you know lots of people, including some people in government, that if you are this way, you will never do this, you will never do this, you will never have this, you'll never have that romantic love, you don't have empathy, you don't have love, which is couldn't be further from the truth. um it is, I feel like this writing these books must be pretty cathartic in having an ability to get that out there. And what's your favorite part about writing about this? What's your favorite stereotype to like smash?
Yeah, that's such a thoughtful question. Thank you, Jen. So a lot of the book was inspired. It's about for anyone does obviously a lot of people won't know, but it's about Raina, who's a 29-year-old autistic podcaster in London, and a lot of her experiences come from my experiences, particularly when we were on sort of press tours for as a screenwriter. I would have a yellow legal pad next to me, and every time a crazy remark would come up, I would write it down, and it was going to go on unapologetic. And exactly as you said, I had one gentleman when we were doing the Emmy kind of nomination circuit, and I was on a Zoom with a guy, and we were talking before we went on into interview mode, and he, I think, like so many journalists, had just come to work and been given the brief and was ready to just dive in, and he hadn't thought about it outside of that, and he looked at his notes and he went, "Oh, you write about autistic people?" I went, "Yeah, yeah, I do, because I also write for kids in YA." And he went, "Oh, that's interesting." And then he said, "So what do you think's causing all the autism?" And I've been hearing this for 33 years now. So I was like, "Oh, what answer does he want? What does he want me to say? Do I tell him like, oh, it's like being left-handed. We know more about it now and we allow it more so that it's diagnosed more, or do I just leave it?" And he went, "Do you think it's all the E numbers in the food? Do you think it's what people are eating?" I said, "Well, no, because it's all over the world. It's not just in America. It's a condition that's global. So no, I don't think it's what you guys are eating," because this was in Utah. And then he said, "Oh, do you think it's like phones or parenting? Like, do you think maybe parents aren't raising kids well enough and that's what it is?" I went, "Oh, no, no, because it's nothing to do with bad behavior. It's not that." And I thought, am I going to say what I'm about to say? And I probably shouldn't say it here either because this is a very classy event. But I said, it's not any of those things that cause autism. And then I could see the V letter forming in his mouth. And he went, "Do you think it is the that?" And I went, "No, it's not. It's not that." That was debunked. And I said, "Actually, like, if you really want to know, the thing that creates autistic people is just lots of fucking." And then they're like, and his face. And I just thought, oh no, I've ruined our rapport for the next 15 minutes. And sure enough, when he wrote up the interview, he said something like the unapologetic screenwriter Elle McNicoll, and I thought, unapologetic, that's really funny. What am I meant to be apologizing for? I'm sorry I said that fucking causes people to give birth to autistic people. I'm sorry, it's hereditary, it's genetic, that's science. But I'm sorry I said it in that way. But then I wrote unapologetic down in my notes, and I was like, that's the word that they keep using, I feel. And it's because disability is supposed to be spoken about in hushed tones. It's supposed to be something that exists in these really in like bookends, I suppose. On one end, you can be a Paralympian with a missing leg that gets the gold medal for skiing, and on the other end, you're Tiny Tim, and there's no kind of in between. But actually, everybody lives in the in between. So that was, I think, the starting off point. Was I was sitting down to write, and I thought, I can't put all of this in a children's book. It needs to go somewhere else. So Unapologetic Love Story became that manifestation of all the very strange things you hear as an autistic adult. So yeah, it's a long answer to the question.
That's totally fine. I have so many things to comment on. Working in the bookstore and working with people all my whole life and being a teacher and being in corporate America, the things that people feel okay to say to any woman, I always am like,
Yes.
huh, okay, that's interesting. But one thing I've taken the practice of doing is, I'll be walking around the store and I'll say, "Oh, excuse me," and 9 times out of 10, the woman who is in front of me will go, "Oh, sorry." And
Right.
I have stopped saying it's okay. And now I say, please never apologize for taking up space and being somewhere, because
Yeah.
men don't, men never go, "Oh, sorry." They're just like, "Oh," and they move out of the way. Um, I, I think we're conditioned to apologize for things that have nothing to do with us. It's just the way we are, and we don't need to apologize. So that I love the title of your book, and I loved your book. I loved all three of these authors' books, and if you guys don't go out and buy them tomorrow, you're just missing out. Anyway, thank you for your lovely, thoughtful answer, Jennifer. Your book was just delightful, and I mean, it was beach volleyball. It's two women. There are certain tropes and stereotypes that come with that. Your main character, Jess, was just the most delightful person that I just wanted to adopt and take home and like feed a cup of soup to and give big hugs to and say, "You are worthy. Just stop letting everybody walk all over you." And she's just wonderful. And I loved all the different characters that you had because they weren't at at any point caricatures of what somebody assumes a lesbian sports person would be. I think lesbian sports women are getting their moment in the sun with all the stuff that's going on with women, people watching women's sports and understanding that they're fantastic to watch and they're exciting to watch, and most of the time they're better at what they do than their male counterparts. And um, why beach volleyball? Is that something that you connect to growing up in British Columbia, or is there beach volleyball?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I played volleyball pretty much my whole life. I had to quit a couple years ago because my knees were just too worn out. But I played indoor volleyball mostly, from elementary school up to university. But then I played in a women's league until a couple of years ago. But I also played a lot of grass volleyball in the summer. I did play some beach volleyball. It's really hard. Like it's too hard for me, getting around on the sand. It's so hot. But I did want to write a book about beach volleyball. I don't like doing research. Like I could never write anything historical because I don't have the patience to dive in to the depth that's needed. And I know a lot about volleyball, and I just thought it'd be really fun to write a book about volleyball. And I also have a real soft spot for Southern California. When I was a kid, my parents took us camping in a little tent trailer all around the Western United States. And I just always
Nice.
loved Southern California. So it seemed like a really fun spot to set the book for beach volleyball. And I also kind of wanted to write about this women's volleyball league, this like, almost professional, but it feeds into this professional league that gets TV time and, they get sponsorships. And I kind of want it to be this big deal where she's got a player's poster in her locker, but there's no mention of the men. There's like no men's professional volleyball league. It was just a women's thing that I wanted to do in this universe where women's athletics are just as important or even more so than the men's athletics. And I agree with you. I think it's really great seeing more and more people talking about women's sports, watching it, more interest. Especially, like there's women's professional hockey leagues are really growing right now.
Yep.
Basketball is getting more and more coverage, soccer. So I think it was like a kind of a nice timing to write a book about these amazing women athletes right now.
Yeah, it's been we just lost two of our really good the Torrent is the Seattle hockey team. And we lost two of our players to, well, one of our really good players to Detroit. Brr. But
Mm,
they're amazing and they're selling out every single game, and we have Olympic gold medal winners. Sorry, Canadian person over there, but we we have we got them. And it's been glorious to watch our hockey team do so well. Our boys hockey team not so much, but the girls are doing great. Um, that's my little microaggression that I like to do is whenever I talk about sports, I like to talk about basketball and then boys basketball, because we also have the Storm, which is an amazing basketball. They have been amazing in the past here. It's a growing season right now in Seattle. But yeah, there's just a lot going on, and I love seeing a book about that, and it was fun to dive into that as a non-sportser myself. It was fun to dive into that world and see, you know, the various degrees of which like people are like I'm gonna be pro. It's never been a dream of mine. I just really like playing the game, and it does not look easy. It looks very hard. I don't like walking on
so
sand,
hard.
let alone running on sand and
Yeah.
throwing my body around in a
Yeah.
bikini. No, no,
Yeah.
not my jam. But I'm glad there are people who do it and get to do what they love. So that's great. Um, there is also a romance author in the book, which is delightful to see, and there's a little bit of fangirling going on, which is also delightful to see. Um, do you guys? I have a kind of an odd question. Most of our covers are cartoony, and I think the cartoons happened during the pandemic for a lot of romance books. I know that before romance kind of surged, it's always been around, but there were a lot of, and I'm going to be aging myself. Fabio was very popular. Fabio, if you do not know, was the spokesman for I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. And among other things, he is a very barrel-chested man with long flowing locks and just completely gorgeous. And he and many other male models were on the covers of, like Taken by the Pirate King and things like that. And I don't know if this is lore or if it's true, but I think that the pandemic caused those photo shoots to go away and caused the cartoony comic book covers to show up. And I know in my store there will be books that I like. I know someone's gonna like Blizzard, where there's some bears on the cover, and it's it's very like and people are like, I can't read that in public, and I'm like, oh, all right, but they have no problem reading like Deep Dive by Ali Hazelwood with like two hands on the cover with like, and that book, if you've read that and you see someone else reading in public, I'm like, I can't look at you, like I can't make eye contact because I don't know what scene you're on, because I want to ask, but it's not appropriate for the bus. This is not good. um do you guys feel like like the cover has anything to do with sales, or anything to do with how your book is represented? And do you miss those covers? Have you ever wanted like a bodice ripper kind of cover, or do you feel like, I don't know, I mean, it could be fun to have that cover, but do you think that and this is for anybody who wants to answer, what's your opinion on the covers these days? And I'm hoping that you're not insulting anybody who's making the covers of your books by asking that question, but because they all are lovely covers, by the way. Looks like you might have an opinion, Amanda.
Oh, Elle had her hand up. I was like, go Elle.
No,
Oh, Elle, go for it.
I was going to quickly say I love both. I love the bodice rippers because I grew up reading those as a teenager, and then I do like the cartoon ones. But I was going to say, if you're mad about the cartoon ones, I think blame the Brits. I think it's actually our fault
Oh, it's
because
your
I
fault.
remember.
Good.
I feel if you want a villain, I mean the British, but I think because I really remember, I'm 33 and I remember when I was 15 reading Julia Quinn. And they were cartoon covers.
Oh,
They were not real people. They were very much illustrated covers. I think people they wanted YAs like me. They wanted us teenagers to move into them. So I think, but those were the UK versions. So I think the Brits are actually to blame. So it's quite normal here for illustrated covers. But I'd love a Fabio one. My generation has missed out on Fabio. So I
I
would
mean,
love that.
it is pretty fantastic. I don't know. The fact that he was doing commercials on as well as being on books was kind of like, I don't know. He's
Booked
a
and
real
busy, yeah.
person.
And it's funny
Anyone?
that you mentioned like the YA to adult thing, because that's to me is the only place where I've had an issue with it, because I'm capable of loving any kind of cover, especially if it's like, like it's a good piece of art. Like my first book came out during the pandemic and it was a YA, and it's called By the Book, a novel of pros and cons. And it's a beautiful illustration, and I just have to name drop it. So go look at it, because that was that artist's first cover. And then she went on and did like the Summer of Broken Rules, like the Cale Walter book, and then like well, what's Casey McQuiston's second one about on the subway with the time
Oh,
slip?
one last stop.
Yes, exactly, that one.
She did
Yeah,
that one too.
anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I love that artist, and but I do find from readers I will occasionally get oh, I didn't know this was YA, because they'll look at the style and they'll think, oh, I've seen so many adult cartoon romance covers, so I was expecting that. And I'm like, okay, well, they have these things called words on the back, which would have told you that this person was a sophomore in high school. So that would have been like a context clue for
Amanda,
you.
you want
But
them to read the book they buy? What are you
I
saying?
know. Like, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't realize this was just for your Pinterest page. But yes. So I run into that sometimes. And then sometimes I'll pick up an adult romance and I'll find, because I still am slightly programmed to see a cartoon cover and think, oh, cute, and that says lightness to me. And so then you're like, wow, there's absolutely zero correlation between spice level and sort of Disney-esque uh, aesthetic and artistic stylings, So, and particularly if we're talking about sports, I can think of some hockey romances where I've been like, whoa, did not see that coming. So, but
Icebreakers
that's
comes
the
to
only
mind.
thing. That is, yes, that is in fact one of the ones I'm thinking of. I was like, all right, Okay, who knew? Because I have a college age daughter and college age niece. And so there's that thing of like, they're like, oh, how about this one? Even when they were still in high school. And I was like, I mean, I feel like that's a question for your parent. I don't know.
As a bookseller, that one has, I've had adorable middle schoolers, and I used to be a middle school teacher, so my way of reacting to this is probably different than other people's. But I had a middle schooler come up and go, I was thinking, I've heard this is a very good book. I'd like to get icebreakers. And I was like, no. Let me show you some other books that are lovely. And I would not feel bad about recommending, because this is going to give you some unrealistic expectations about what happens in college. I hope, because this is a lot. And I've also had some dads come up to the counter with a book that they're buying, their World War II military history, and they're like, oh, and then whatever she wants. And the girl put it down and be like, I'm like, you're 11. No. And that's not to kink shame anybody, but at 11, I don't think that that's appropriate. And then there's the like, what were you reading when you were 11, Jen? And I'm like, I snuck it out of the library. That's how I got away with it. I didn't make some poor bookseller give it to me, but that's different. Anyway, do you have an opinion about this, Jennifer? Could you?
I love the cartoon covers. When I found out, like my first book with St. Martin's was Flirty Dancing, and when I found out Lenny Kaufman was doing my cover, I like fell out of my chair. Lenny, of course, like yeah, it's
It's
stunning.
lovely. Yeah.
I can't even. So I was just over the moon about that. Lenny's work is just gorgeous. I was thrilled to have a beautiful cartoon cover by Lenny. And yeah, I do get there's a little bit of like, is it YA? Is it adult? Is it spicy? Is it not? And I get the confusion there, but I think, yeah, you just have to be aware of what you're buying. And if it's your kid, do a little research. But I love the cartoon covers. They're so pretty.
Yeah. Read the back of the book. It's what it's there for. It's okay. An educated consumer is our best customer. Like, ask the if you start going down and you're like, oh, this looks different than what I thought. That's okay. Maybe you'll find a surprise that you didn't know. I have people who come in and are like, there was nothing. There was a kiss at the end, and I'm like, yeah, some people like that, and that's okay. And then they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I was reading like the first page. I'm like, yeah, that's some people like that too. It's okay. If that's not yours, you guys should switch. It's good. Um, I'm just checking to see if we have any questions from our audience, and anybody out there. We're so happy to have you joining us. Please feel free to ask any questions you have. Um, I do have a question about who everybody here. I'm assuming you're all readers because you write. Maybe I'm wrong, but who is what book are you reading now that you're absolutely loving? I personally went off the rails and did the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I don't know why I like those books. I'm not really sure I can explain why I like them, but I devoured them and they were super fun. So if you're a romance reader and want to go into like a weird sci-fi fantasy RPG game, those are kind of fun. And I kind of get what all the hype's about now. Um, let's see, Jennifer, do you have a book you're thinking of? I don't mean to put you
Yeah,
on the spot.
I just finished reading Ladylike by Mackenzie Lee, which is a
Ooh.
sapphic historical rivals to lovers. It was so good. Mackenzie's work is just so funny. I don't obviously read as much as I would like to because, as I'm sure you guys feel the same, I have another job and I'm trying to write books and be on a deadline and I have kids. So I don't read as much as I would like to, but when I do read, it tends to be either queer romance, just to kind of, know what's happening around me in the market, or an author friend's book. You make lots of connections as a writer, and I like to read my friends' books, so that's kind of what I mostly read. But I did love Mackenzie Lee's book. I also actually, the very first queer romance book that I picked off a shelf in a bookstore was one of Mackenzie's books, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. And I happened
Ooh.
to be in Powell's, the famous bookstore in Portland, on my birthday. And it just feels like this kind of magical selection that I made because that book was a big influence for my writing too. The Friends to Lovers, Slow Burn. So I'm a big fan of Mackenzie Lee's books. Of course, Casey McQuiston, like Red, White, and Royal Blue was also a big influence
Such a
on me,
great
and I
book.
loved the pairing. All their books are so great, and kind of the sort of the vibe, the bantery kind of work that I try to put out too is really inspired by Casey as well.
It's funny because she's very much, or they're very much on the page, where you were not. You were very like, I'm gonna. You're very slow burn, but I can see the connections between the two books too, because they're like their books are phenomenal. If you haven't
Mm.
gone out and read them, I hope you're all making a reading list because these are some good books. These anybody let's see. Elle, would you like to tell us what you're reading
Yeah,
these days?
I always love Talia Hibbert. I think you can't go wrong with Talia. I am currently rereading Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase.
Mm.
I am excited for The Knave and the Moon by Rachel Gillig, which is coming out in September in the UK. And then because I'm a screenwriter as well, I like to read screenplays and scripts. And it's actually an off-Broadway play I'm reading at the moment. It's called Love, Loss, and What I Wore, and it was adapted by Nora and Delia Ephron. I
Oh,
got to see it. I got to see it in New York a long time ago, but I'm reading the actual script, and it's just so brilliant. It's so smart and so unapologetic, and I just really love it.
it's Love, Life, and what?
Love, loss, and what I wore.
Oh,
It's
that makes
about
more sense.
fashion and how fashion informs women's lives, whether they want to embrace it or not, and it's really lovely.
Nora Ephron's just so much fun too, because she's just fun. And how about you, Amanda?
Um, I just finished two amazing books that kind of reset my brain, just because the quality of the language was so amazing, and I found them narratively audacious. And so I was like, whoa, I haven't seen this before. And one was Dear Monica Lewinsky, which amazing.
Yes, such a good
And
book.
such a good book. And wow, did it take me back to being that age and what it felt like to be inside the skin and inside the mind of a 19 and 20-year-old woman and student and figuring yourself out. And yeah, the observations about sort of the human condition were just unparalleled, and then it was brilliantly written as well, and just gorgeous prose. And I also really liked The Infamous Gilberts, which was almost felt slightly mystery-ish, but what a fascinating POV, choice there, where you start with sort of, you don't know who the narrator is or how they relate to what are essentially like the main characters of it, but they're taking you on a tour of this crumbling, decrepit manor house that's going to be converted into a hotel. And they're like, let me show you. Do you see this mark on the carpet? Let's talk about where that came from. And then you're
Oh,
sort of diving deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And I thought it was such a great idea, and then really well done as well. But I feel like I should also talk about romances. So I will say,
you can.
given the day, something that I love, a contemporary romance that really works for me, Julian Winters, who, has like a
Mm.
long and storied career in YA, but I love Julian's adult romances as well. I Think They Love You is delightful. And I haven't read the more recent one, which is sort of connected character wise, but um, has some of my favorite things that I think of as very old movie core things, which is like the side characters are almost the most hilarious part. And there are some family group chats in there that like will just make me laugh just thinking about them. And then because
Awesome.
what is it? What is it's Summerween? It's our moving into spooky season. I always recommend my writing BFF, Megan Bannon, her series that starts with the undermining of, no, the undertaking of Heart and Mercy, and then goes to the
Yes.
undermining of Twilight and Frank, and then, yes,
Okay.
the
So
undercutting of Rosie and Adam. Yeah. Which is
being a,
dedicated to me, I have to say.
is
Yes.
it really?
Yes.
Oh my
C'est
God.
moi.
So that second book, Frank and Twilight. So if you have not found a book out there that has a 50-year-old heroine and a 50-year-old male character, best friends to lovers, oh my God, I just ate that book up, and it's always on the shelf at our store. And I'm like, no, no, but you have to read it. And they're like, I don't like paranormal. I'm like, shut up, just read this book. It's really good. Because there's so little representation about older women because we all crawl up and die and don't do anything after our insta love at 19. It's it was just so I need to. Could you tell her that I love that book?
I will
That
happily do that. And you haven't
like,
even
oh
mentioned the
my
sparkly pink baby dragon, which I think just tells you like how much richness and depth there is here that you
God,
can,
there's so
wax
much.
rhapsodic without even having to go there.
Yes, there's so much cool stuff in that book. And talk about a cinnamon roll of a main character who's just going to go out of his way, walk into an abandoned house just so he can get the stuff he needs to make things happen the right way. Come on. That's what we all need in a romance book. Sorry, I get excited about these things. Um, yeah, it's so funny to me what there's I realized that I didn't mention a romance book in what I was reading, and I've been reading your book, so it's been delightful. But Chloe Liesel, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the last name, and I might be butchering it, has a new one out, two new ones out. Well, she has a new one out and a second one, and they've just awesome. And she wrote the Bergman Brothers, which I just loved because she takes making sure people are seen to like another level. She's like, "You got IBS? I want to write a book about somebody with IBS. I got to like," and it's not just like she's just going to cover it. These are real people dealing with real issues, and hey, by the way, they still have sex and fall in love. And I love her books and her new book, and I can't remember the name of it because I'm having a moment, but it's coming out in September and it's delightful, and I really have enjoyed those too. If you guys haven't read any of her books, I highly recommend those books.
Yeah, one of
Uh,
my favorite sports romances is by Chloe, Everything for You, which
yes,
is the soccer player. Yeah, that's such a good
is
one too.
that's not the first one in that series. It's I mean because
I don't think so, no.
they have the most remarkable family. There's seven of them. All of them are really good at
Yeah,
all different kinds of sports.
yeah.
Um, there's one. She's a soccer player and he's an artist. That one I thought was amazing. Um, that one I don't know. I think that might be the Everyone for You. Is that the one we're talking about,
No,
Jennifer?
that one, Everyone for You is two men. It's like the older veteran who has like the chronic pain and knee problems, which I also relate to. And then the younger kind of, hot shot coming along,
And
which
he's
is kind of a
allowed to be
similar.
out, but the older one is not out. Like or
Uh,
he is out at the end. There was a little bit of
yeah, I don't really remember that aspect of the story. But I also, it reminded me too of Cleat Cute by Meryl Wilsner, another soccer one with, again, the older veteran and the younger hotshot. So that's always a fun vibe for sports romance.
yeah. I do like those a lot. I went down the rabbit hole of Heated Rivalry and The
Mhm.
Deal and all those. It's hard not to. Like you get one and you're just like, oh, that was tasty. I'm gonna go for some more. I think of them like chips, kind of. I'm like, okay,
Right.
how can
Yeah.
you just have one, right? Like you just can't. Um, is there anything pressing that anybody like wants to talk about in terms of like how how they approach writing a romance novel? Like, is there first of all, why are you writing romance novels? Like, I, I'm always curious about that because I read them because I love them, and I find myself having to. It's almost like when I was in school for science. I feel like I have to defend my right to be there. And I find that when people are like, "Oh, do you read real books?" I'm like, "Yeah." Turns out they're real. They have pages, and they have stories, and they have plots, and they're all real. And I'm not doing it because it's some cutesy thing. It's because I enjoy the stories. Like, do you ever run into like that type of bias against romance? I mean, today is a day where we are unapologetically romance readers and we love romance, but are you still running into that in the outside world where it's not romance day? Or is that hopefully gone? Maybe it's gone.
I was
Yeah,
doing a panel.
no, you go ahead, Elle.
No, no, honestly, you go first.
Okay. I haven't really run into that. But I
Good.
haven't been writing very long. I just started writing during COVID, as a way to like escape the horrors of the world, essentially. And I just really wanted to write happy, low angst, escapist, tropey, cute books. That's kind of always what I've wanted to do. And I haven't felt any sense of shame. Like romance is just so popular. I think we all know that it's holding up the publishing industry essentially. And I think it's so widely accepted. Heated rivalry, of course, was massive. And I think it's just become pretty acceptable. I mean, there's going to be, literary snobs here and there, but I think it's so widely popular and all over shelves in bookstores. And I've had really no issue. I don't feel embarrassed by it or anything. I wanted to write happy ever after books, and that's what I'm doing.
I love that so much, being a Gen X person, because we grew up kind of having to do other stupid stuff. So I'm just, thank you. Yay, something worked. Elle?
I was doing a panel with the Women's Prize in the UK for this book for Unapologetic because it's out in the UK, and the chair was so amazing. But she said, "So your book's like it's a romance novel, but it's not like a Mills and Boon one." And I just was like, "Stop right there, stop right there." I was like, "I would love to be a Mills and Boon author. That would be a dream." I don't know where the snobbery comes from, but I remember on stage saying something like, I don't know. I think the literary world at large, and exactly as Jennifer just said, romance is holding up the publishing industry, genre is holding up the publishing industry. But I think the literary world at large still thinks that it's really impressive to talk about tragedy and it's really profound to talk about sad, depressing things. And to me, that has always just been like a child that can crush a bug with its shoe and then it goes, "Look, I just crushed this bug, isn't that sad?" And sort of like, yeah, that's so easy. Like that's what the sort of the id wants. But to write something that's affirming and to write something that makes people feel better about the good things in life and makes them remember all of the good things that at the end of their life will come rushing back to them, not the things that are stressful necessarily, not the things that are ugly, not the things that are cruel, but all the things that are good about life. I think to write about those things and to still have struggle and to still have a journey, but to come to a nice resolution in the end. I think that's really brave in this world where we're in an attention currency world and everybody's looking for negative attention a lot of the time and there's so much ugliness. I think to write about something beautiful and to write about the best in people, I think that's really hard and really commendable, and that's why it's the most popular genre in publishing.
Well said. Well said. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, to piggyback on what Elle was saying too about that assumption that it's hard to write something tragic, and I just think, have you tried to write humor? Have you tried to write comedy? Like to
Mhm.
do that well is so hard. That's an elite level skill. And when I read a book, sometimes I'll read a book and they'll just be like three lines that I thought were genius, like one liners, or just comedic punchlines or whatever, or setups. And I'm like, for me, that made the whole experience of it worth it, like worth the price of admission just for those, because somebody just went like, sailing into the stratosphere of like comedy writing right there. But like, in terms of embarrassment, I have three younger brothers and my dad, and they are extremely supportive of my writing career. And so I do personally feel embarrassment when they want to talk to me about reading my books and
oh,
share their thoughts about certain scenes. I was basically like, I was like biting my arm to keep from whimpering. Then when my dad called me and he was like, "Oh, tickle." And I just love the chemistry between those characters in that beach scene. And I was like, "Oh, sorry,
oh,
Dad. I had to jump out the window. So we're going to have to finish this conversation later." But yeah.
oh. I mean, it's unfortunate because part of me is like, yeah, I want to tell. We do the round robin every month where we all the booksellers talk about what we're reading, and I work with some phenomenal people, poets and all kinds of things, and I always sit next to my friend Danielle, who's a published poet, and she always pulls out a book, and it's like, I read this in the original German, and I really thought it really encapsulated what was going on with our environment right now, and how the Great Lakes are disappearing, and the prose was beautiful, and I always have to go up, and I'm like, hear me out. Vampires and werewolves living together. It's really great. And then I just like feel like, I really like this book. And they're all like, who's going to buy that? Number one on the book list, Bride. Thank you very much. It was right there the next week. But there is sort of a little pang. Like I'm like, I love these things. I feel them. I know they're holding up the industry. I'm not going to be embarrassed about it, but I'm always like, am I not going to be embarrassed? I'm a little embarrassed because you're going to think this is frivolous, but it really made me laugh. It made me experience joy, and there's so little joy right now. We really need to have as much joy as possible. So, um, well, we have about 8 minutes, and I'm wondering if anybody in the come on, guys, don't be shy. We'd love to have some questions, but I have many questions. We can keep talking. Um, I do find that reading these books kind of make me a more of a feminist because I'm taking control of. I have read some non-feminist ones where I'm like, a lot of books come my way, and I'll start reading, and I'm like, oh, I think this is not what I normally read. Okay, this is a trad wife romance, and this isn't my jam, but I'm glad that they're out there for other people to enjoy. Um, but I do feel like one of the things that, first of all, Elle and Jennifer, I'm so excited that you don't feel like this is a problem at all because and I don't want to lump you with me, Amanda, because I have a teenager as well, so I'm feeling like we're in the same. But it's not always been this way, and the fact that you can say unequivocally like, yeah, no, I this is what's holding up the industry and we should be proud and happy about it, like, yeah, no, like that's delightful for me, and I don't know how, I can't understate how delightful it is that's what's going on. um but I also think that it's another place where women can exert what, like, this is what I like, this is what I want, and this is how I'm gonna read about it. And I do think that that's the other thing, that this particular genre allows people to experience that little bit of freedom to be able to say, this is my jam. I want to read about a really competent woman who just bosses some guy around, and he is hopelessly in love with her, or vice versa. Like I like the fact that there's that space now. And I'm loving the fact that there's that space for men too, because I think they're starting to see romance as something they can read. And the most delightful conversations I've had in the bookstore are men coming to find books for their significant others who are, like, well, we just read Talia Hibbard's book together, and I'm looking for something that's that sexy, and you know, it's just been such a delight. Are you finding like, is it just me, or are there men picking up your books and enjoying them just as much? Or, I mean, you have four men that embarrass the heck out of you reading your books, Amanda, but other than the people that actually you just don't want to picture doing any of those things with, like, are there other men who are reading these books, and have you noticed a trend towards that?
I have some autistic men that have been really loving unapologetic, and that's been my fiance included, which is lovely, but he's very biased. But that's been really, really lovely, where they pick it up because of the representation, not necessarily because of the genre, and then they ended up really liking it, and that's been really nice. And they've come to going on tour in the UK. The events are very women heavy, but then there was just a few of these guys, and I was like, I think they're in heaven. They look like they're in heaven. They were like, "Oh my gosh, this is great!" And one of them even said afterwards, he was like, "This is such a nice environment." I was like, "Yeah, this is the book world. Like, this
Mm.
is acceptance. This is community." Like, and so it's been really, really lovely, and I think that they get to see that the things that misogynist men have said about the romance genre for decades aren't true, and so it's been really, really nice. But even if there were no men reading, I'm okay with women just reading as well. I really love that it's a genre that's been elevated by women, so that means a lot as well. But it's been nice to see some men. Yeah.
Awesome. We do have a question from someone other than me, so you get to hear other people's questions. Roberta would like to know, um, what do you think makes a book a rom-com versus just a romance? Like, is there something that as you're writing, and Amanda, you kind of touched on this, like, writing comedy is hard. It's not, you're trying to write for an audience that you're not going to hear them laugh back. You're not going to get a vibe. You're writing. So what do you think makes what's the difference? Is there, because I know that those are my favorites, but what makes them rom-com versus romance?
Yeah, well, and I think for a long time that there was a marketing term that was getting slapped onto everything, right? Because people thought, oh, everybody wants rom-coms right now. So anything that's a romance, we'll call it a rom-com because it has 2.5 jokes, right? And so therefore it's clearly a rom-com. But I think a good definition that I heard by another writer was that in a rom-com, it has to be, not just the dialogue that's funny, but the setup of the book, the premise has to have some degree of ridiculousness baked into it, or potential for chaos and comedy of that kind. So it's not just that occasionally some funny things happened in an otherwise extremely serious book. It's that, no, like the whole thing, like it's baked in, and that's the intention, and that's what we're going for. So it's a feature, not a bug of the product.
It's the fake psychic medium going to the goat farm to get rid of the ghost that is actually there. So, Elle, did you have any?
I would actually, no, I just want to say that is absolutely right, and I agree with him. Yeah, nothing more to say.
No, it's
Nope.
Yeah, I think
Jennifer.
it's kind of like almost a rom-com to me has like a rhythm to it. If you think even like in a movie, a rom-com movie has a certain rhythm, certain beats you hit, certain kind of flow to it that I don't feel like a romance has. So I try and have that kind of, again, the word rhythm to me works. I like to have that kind of lighthearted rhythm where you're setting up a specific trope. You might know how it's going to go, but you still want to find out anyways. I love that word chaos that Amanda used. Try and have the element of like anything ridiculous could happen in this moment. Things get a little bit crazy. And yeah, I think, and also I agree that being funny is really hard. Um, I think I laugh out loud at books way less often than I would cry at a book. Like humor is really hard. I remember I saw a review once that said, I think it was about Flirty Dancing, how, well, this book is marketed as a rom-com, but I didn't find it funny.
Oh,
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry.
oh,
I
maybe.
try. Yeah. But yeah, writing humor is hard. And I think I try and go for that anything can happen rhythm where you recognize the pattern, but you don't really know how it's all going to go down.
That review reminds me of the one in Book Reads. Terrible book, did not read, 1 star. It's like, oh, okay.
Also, for the record, Flirty Dancing is hilarious. So
Oh,
that
thank you.
person
Yes.
was clearly had a case of like they were
Yeah.
just humor that was dead to
Yeah.
them. So yeah, they were
That's
not getting
fine.
it. So yeah.
Amanda actually wrote a lovely blurb for me for Flirty Dancing, which was so
Oh,
kind of her.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I have recommended it to many people since, and
Oh,
especially like I love that, I mean, I have not read the volleyball book yet, but for me, like summer theater is much closer to my kind of sport.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes. I,
Counts. Dancing, right? That counts.
yeah.
I, I, I agree with all of this. I'm just, we've come to the end of our hour, and I just have to say, I just had so much fun speaking with all of you, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation too. And I hope the people who are in attendance enjoyed that as well. It's just such a fun thing that I look forward to every year, is to be able to talk to authors and hopefully not fangirl too much about them, but I love what all of you do, and I think you're very important for people out there, and you're doing great work. So thank you. And I don't see any more questions. Thank you, Roberta, for your question. And guys, thank you for being here. Please remember to pick up their books. We have a link to buy them online. Elle has Unapologetic Love Story coming out in October, but she also has, if you haven't read it, Wish You Were Here, Wish You Were Her, excuse me. Apparently I have not read it yet, and I'm not good at this.
I
Hold
love
on.
that title. It's so good.
Wish You
Thank
Were
you.
Her. I mean, how many? And you get to see the real. There you go. And then Jennifer has this book, Bump Set Sparks. Awesome book. Who knew that volleyball people could be so lovely and so deep? Great book. Came out in June. Read it. Also, here's Flirty Dancing. This is another book that Jennifer's written that now I'm going to have on my TBR pile. And then Amanda's book that just came out on Tuesday, My Best French Wedding. So much fun, so funny, kooky characters, delightful, very witty, very quick. Every time I read something, I'm like, wait, I need to go back and read that because there's all these little jabs and jokes hidden within. And then Flirting with Murder is another book she's written among many. So please take the time to go out and read more of these. And thank you guys for being here. And thank you, audience, for joining us. I hope you guys all had fun.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Jed.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Jen.
This is Billy from Bookstore Romance Day again. I wanted to thank you all again for coming. Thank you to all of our sponsors who help keep this all free for people to attend. And a reminder that there will be a link to the recording going out via email. I will try and include all of the books that everybody talked about that were not the panelist books. And there are more events coming up this weekend. If you haven't registered, there is a link in the chat to register via Eventbrite for those. Thank you all and have a great remainder of your day.